hope you enjoyed Muzika and the music of David Broza. I found him to be a most accessible guitarist.
Absolutely.
His work is beautiful, absolutely. In all the programs I looked at from your series, I chose that one because I thought his music was so accessible to so many people.
Yes, absolutely.
How did you decide to make this series?
I had to make something completely different. I was making, I made about 52 documentaries to this date. And
52 documentaries. I have to stop you. In how short a period of time?
in about 10 years.
Okay, that's remarkable.
So when it came to Muzika, I spent about 3 years making a movie called The Hilltops, which has aired nationally in Canada and made it to Hot Docs this past year. And I needed a break. The Hilltops was about West Bank settlers, and I really needed a break from politics. And what's on the opposite spectrum? Music, arts, culture, to some degree. And I got the green light, and originally we were supposed to make 13 episodes only. And it sort of snowballed from there. I called Lior Cohen, who made this series with me, and we started contacting Israeli musicians, and we thought we'd get maybe 10, 13 at the most, but we got the first 13, then we got 20, then we got 28, and by the time it was all done, we had 52 artists.
Wow. And I mean, in a nation of, what, 7 million people, you have that many artists that are...
Oh, there's even more. I want to make another 52 episodes.
Seriously?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the Israelis love to sing. Israelis love culture. Israelis love music. It's not just politics. And one of the main reasons I wanted to make this show is to make people aware of the fact that Israel is not just about politics. There's so much more to it. And there are so many brilliant musicians that are really, really making it on the world stage right now, like David Broza, Achinoam Nini, Noah, who we have who we feature in the show, or Idan Reichel, who is really huge on the world stage scene right now. And I really wanted people to be aware of that.
You neglected my faves, Infected Mushroom.
Infected Mushrooms. I did interview Infected Mushroom for a different series that I made. They're not included in this particular batch of 52, but who knows if I get to make another 52.
We talked about this in the green room. There's a massive trance progressive electronic movement in Israel. Why is that? I mean, I always think of it as being the Belgians and the Dutch and the Germans, maybe the Brits, but...
Israelis love to party. Tel Aviv has been named like one of the biggest party cities in the world, if not number one. Israelis absolutely love to party.
I will never forget being in Dizengoff Square as the sun went down on a Saturday night, and when all the young people come pouring into the streets because the Sabbath is over. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. Yeah. So the music scene, what drives the music scene in Israel? Is it radio, or is it who you know? I mean, because it's a smaller nation, how do you do that?
The thing that we wanted to focus on in the show was not just to show one type of genre. So the show has everything from hip-hop to rock to jazz to Ladino music to Hasidic music.
Explain.
Yeah. Ladino is a Spanish, is a dying language that's somewhat of something like Spanish. It's a dying language, but there's a singer by the name of Yasmin Levy who sings in it. So we were really looking for unique acts. And what drives the Israeli music is basically what drives music all around the world. People want to express themselves. But what you have that's amazing about Israel is that you have that fusion of the European culture, the Middle Eastern culture, the Arab culture, the Western influence from the United States and Canada. So all of that kind of infused into one hub of a little nation of people who just want to sing and make it. And they create very, very exciting music.
As a doc maker and a producer, did you have difficulty getting music rights, clearing music rights when making this kind of program?
No, not at all. The artists and their PR were more than happy to allow us to showcase the music and the music videos. I mean, they offer it for free on YouTube anyways, for every day. And the whole thing was to promote the artist and their music. We didn't ask any personal questions. This wasn't a gossip-like show.
No.
We didn't care about their personal life. All we cared about was them as artists and as musicians and their music.
How well has this been received in Israel?
Very well. We had tremendous press. The show hasn't been showcased in Israel. The show is actually, as you saw in the episode, it's in English.
English language, yeah.
And it's aimed at North American audience. But we had amazing press on Israel's, on Jerusalem Post, on Israel's main newspaper, Yediot Ahronoth, on Channel 2, Israel's Channel 2, Israel's radio station, official radio station, just did a big 10-minute interview with me recently. So the show is really being well received because they like the fact that somebody took that initiative to showcase Israeli music to the world.
And again, I ask you, as I did with Kassam, you live in Canada a good part of the time.
Absolutely.
So why are Israeli subjects of such interest to you?
I live in it. I have a slight obsession with Israel. I love Canada, and I do make films in Canada about Canadian issues with other Canadian filmmakers. So I'm not just one-trick pony. I don't make just movies about
fair.
Jews in Israel. But I do. A large part of my career has been spent about Jewish issues, and one of the biggest Jewish issues out there is Israel. The future of Israel, the current contemporary issues that are occurring in Israel. And when I created my production company, Chutzpah Productions, the mandate that I was setting out for myself was to deal with subject matters that matter to the Jewish world, and Israel is a huge part of that. And it's a huge part of my life because I was born there. I go visit a lot. A lot of my family and friends still live there. So it has a huge influence on me. But to be fair, I'm not just about Israel, and I make a lot of films that deal with Canadian issues as well.
Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned 52 documentaries over how long a period of time?
Over about a 10, 12-year period.
So you're making like a documentary every 2-3 months?
Something along those lines.
How do you keep that pace?
I love making documentary films. I love making documentaries. It's all, I really feel that if you truly love something, you just do it. I don't wait for funding that much, so I'm always out there filming.
How do you keep body and soul together, for example? So if you're not waiting for funding, which is often the case of documentary makers, they're applying for government money, or they're looking for money from a broadcaster, whatever. I mean, how do you keep going?
I don't just direct and produce. I shoot a lot of television shows, a lot of documentary films for other filmmakers. I edit. My first love is editing. So I edit a lot of projects, be it from corporate videos to documentary films to television shows for various channels in Canada and in the US as well. So I wear 6, 7 different hats sometimes. I just finished a big research gig for an Israeli television channel that was doing a 4-part series in Canada. So I basically do everything. I make coffee if I need to earn a living. I'll do anything so I can go. Once I do that, I can earn a living, live my lifestyle, and at the same time be able to make my documentary films. And if I can't get funding for them, I'm not going to wait. I'm still going to go and do them. And by being able to do all of those other jobs in the industry, I'm able to make my documentaries.
When you travel to Israel, you take your own camera, you rent equipment there. How do you do that?
I have my own gear. I think the number one thing that documentary filmmakers should be doing is investing in their own gear. The number one rule is don't rent. Why rent? Technology is the way it is today, allows you to make amazing looking films for not the cost there was 20 years ago. So I own my own gear, I own my own facilities, and by owning my own gear, by editing my own work and doing things along those lines, the costs are relatively low.
But with the constant upgrades and the technology, we work in television here. The technology is constantly evolving. How do you make your decision?
Well, you make an investment. When I decide to buy a camera, it's not for 1 or 2 years. It's for at least 5 to 6 years. And technology does change, absolutely. But the cameras are still acceptable by most broadcasters. And when you need to upgrade, you upgrade. Okay.
So given that you're not being driven by financing, how do you know when you're going to make a documentary on something? How do you know it strikes you? I'm going to do that.
I have a list that I've created, and I add to that list of all the topics that I want to make a movie on. And for example, and I develop those topics, and sometimes it takes 6 months, and sometimes it takes 5 years. The Hilltops was one of those projects, for example. It took 5 years to develop and 3 years to shoot. So I constantly add more things to my list. I read a lot of newspapers. I listen to a lot of people. I meet a lot of people, and I listen to their stories. And if something that I find is interesting to me, I'll go out and do it.
So when we come back after the break, what I want to do is talk to you about your ongoing projects, the ones that you're working on now, and where Chutzpah is going.
Absolutely.
Please stay with us. We'll be back shortly.